Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, men and women today. So, as I was telling you, we will wait for a couple of minutes for Father Lucio to reach us. And in the meantime, we can start with a short introduction. I would like to remind you to kindly rename yourself, adding the language you speak before your name here on Zoom, because afterwards we will use this indication for language groups, as you saw also in the chat. My name is Patrizia Morgante. I am the officer for the project Communicating Religious Life, which in November will have a week of events concerning communication in religious life. From November the 27th to November 30th, we will have workshop in the morning and in the afternoon, Rome time. And in the midday, we will have some conferences, some of which will be dedicated for communicators, both lay and consecrated people working in congregations, whereas others will be open to the general public so as to nourish this culture of communication in the congregations. I am really pleased to have organized these events in collaboration with the Union of Major Superiors of Italy, which is USMI. I'm very pleased to introduce to you Sister Paola Fosson, who will introduce us today's and tomorrow's webinars on the document Towards Full Presence. Welcome, Sister Paola. Thank you very much. Thank you. Welcome for everybody participating in these webinars, in these two meetings. My name is Sister Paola Fosson of the Daughters of St. Paul, and I've been collaborating with USMI, that is the Union of Major Superiors of Italy, as for the sector of communication. Now, urged by the specific moment that the consecrated life has been living in, which is a further invitation to increasingly find new ways to collaborate and share among us, and being urged also by the synod that we have been celebrating and that suggests us to operate together in our life and in our mission, being living stones of a living church, because our church is based on the Word of God and is constantly enlivened by the Holy Spirit, I wished to start this small experience of unity that today sees two organisms, two bodies that work for consecrated life, as Patrizia already said, UISG and USMI, together, drawing inspiration by the recently published document for the Dicastery for Communication Towards Full Presence, a pastoral reflection on engagement with social media, to start some deeper analysis and a dialogue which may continue also independently in the various congregations concerning social media. Now, this document doesn't only address consecrated people, but all Christians. I believe this actually also involves us, because social media are part of our life as well as consecrated men and women, our personal life, our community, and even apostolic life. Social media have a great potential for us, because they are environment to be lived in a constructive way. They also mean people to be met and to whom to announce Christ and his gospel. How may our listening, our sharing, our contemplating, our weaving relationships, and our being close to others being carried out in the environment of social media? Now, this document may suggest us a change for the best, a progress in in religious life as for social media. And so the objectives of these two meetings are First of all, opening a dialogue in the congregations concerning the role that social media have at the personal and pastoral level, promoting a culture of encounter in the light of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Paula, for introducing us to the topic for today. I'm very happy to have here with us Father Lucio. If we can see him, please, Gianluca. He is already here with us, and we want to give him a special word of welcome. Here he is. Welcome. Please open your microphone, Gianluca.
Good morning to all. Apologies, I improvised a place where I could sit. I've just got off the plane from Rome. I'm in Argentina visiting my family. My mother's turning 84. She's very sick, so I entrust her to you if you can pray a Hail Mary. So perhaps I will remove this background. Welcome, Father. We will now have an introduction and then we give you the floor to listen to you directly. This is a gift for us today. Okay, let us recall the theme, today's theme, especially this document towards a full presence. I think it's a reflection that we all know, published by the Dicastery for Communication, for an ethical and spiritual reflection on our presence in the social media. As Paula was saying, it is very important for us to go a little deeper into this document, not simply reading it, but that it may help us change our attitude in communications in the congregation. We have selected a brief quote from this document so that it can guide us. And during these 2 days, I'm going to read it in Italian. We have it here in both languages.
Jesus Christ, the way and the truth and the life, represents the principle for our communion with God and each other. We learn a style of sharing from the one who loved us and gave himself for us. This style is reflected in three attitudes that are closeness, compassion, and tenderness. I am now giving the floor to Sister Paula because she is going to introduce us Father Lucio, who is our speaker for today. Paula, the floor is yours. Please open your microphone. Here I am. So I will just focus on the essentials because Father Lucio has many important qualities. He is Lucio Adrian Ruiz. He is the secretary of the Dicastery for Communication in the Holy See. He comes from Argentina. He was ordained priest in 1990. He has a master's degree in business administration, and he is also holds a doctorate degree in biomedicine. Now he teaches uh, at the University of the Holy Cross. He is part of the group of artificial intelligence for the Pontifical Academy for Life. He has a deep experience in this field, and he very brotherly wants to be called father, and he also has a complete and integrated vision on a world that has been experiencing a deep change. So thank you very much, Father Lucio. The floor is yours.
Should I speak Spanish? Yes. Well, first of all, I'd like to say, dear sisters, I'd like to thank you wholeheartedly for having invited me to participate to this meeting with you. I am truly very, very happy and I'm really very thankful. It is a beautiful moment to participate with you. I feel great admiration for the consecrated people who seek not only to update themselves, maintaining an updated formation, but also seek to challenge themselves in the face of the journey of God's people, a journey in history. Therefore, it's about feeling missionary in our heart, people of God who walk, and we as consecrated people make an effort wholeheartedly as far as reason, knowledge, and our strengths. It's about knowing the language, the way of living to give them the charisma, this joyful announcement of the resurrected Christ, and that changes the metaphysics of history. This is extremely important. We don't have many things to tell God's people. We have one great thing: Jesus was risen. He has forgiven the sins and has conquered death. And this is the announcement that changes history. And it's a before and after that is essential because it is the change when there was nothing before, there was nothing before death. But now we not only have something, we have it all. We are children of the Father and we call him Dad. What needs to change is the language, the clothing, which allows us to be understood and accepted by the other so that we can live and feel the caress of God. So, this type of reflection about this vocation and presence in history, this is essential, especially in this digital culture, which is our own. I hope it can be a fruitful time for you and all of us because reflecting to reflect constantly speaks to us as this dynamic of God incarnation. He had a time, a history, a culture. He was incarnated. And this is the intrinsic dynamic of the church. It's a constant call that needs to be made to the church. It has to constantly be incarnated in every culture so that everyone can understand what we want to say in order to journey through history with every person so that our message is understood and that it becomes flesh and life in every person and culture. It's important with its time dynamics and language, and we'll come back to this. That is why it is so beautiful to see you all here. These evangelizers who are in love. Thank you wholeheartedly. Today we meet as church, the entire church, in a process that stems from the call, the appeal of Pope Francis, so that all the church can be listening. We are in the synod, we all are. Some are gathered in the synodal hall, but the whole church is gathered, and we're asked to listen, to have the courage to discover the suffering flesh of Christ, to go out to listen. Because the kerygma, the resurrection, is precisely announced to the one who is sick, to the dead, the one who needs hope. It is to that person that it is announced. I came to seek who was lost, the sinner, the lost sheep. the suffering flesh of Christ. And as they respond, so we have to be the Good Samaritans in the first person. It is beautiful. There's a theme of the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan goes to meet the person in the first person with his time, knowledge, and everything that refers to he's not sent by his superior. He's not sent to other people. He is the one who steps out in a deep announcement. So we should be the Samaritans who heal the wounds of history with the salvation love of Jesus. Beautiful. Based on this summons of Pope Francis to put us all in a synod, we should all be in an attitude of listening, discernment, spiritual dialogue, and Samaritanization, stepping in the first person into the tenderness and mercy of Jesus. Those are the only things that heal the existential wounds of humanity today. That's the process that we are in. And it is in this perspective that we take from all this world with so many colors and realities. We take a small bit that is the topic of the document, fully toward a fully a full fully present. It's a document that we prepared to start a journey of a response or a proposition or reflection with the entire church to see how the church needs to move in the world of digital communication, of digital culture. So we can all think about the digital aspect, and there's a fundamental aspect here that's the social media. So that's why this document is called Toward the Full Presence, because it calls to the full presence of the one who's there so he can come here, but it is preceded by the one who's here who goes that goes there, because in order to be missionary we have to go toward the other. And this is what I'm going to deal with differently during our time, because the full presence of the encounter of the Eucharist, of being present, begins with an encounter that seeks that seeks them in every possible way wherever they are. There are so many, so it has to emerge from our missionary spirit to go there. And it is in this perspective of pilgrims that we want to invite to discover and to bring to life in every one of us a very important thing that is at the center of fully present of this document. It is the concept that is cultural and not instrumental of what communication means and implies today. Because communications, and I underline it, is not about talking about tools or technology. It's to talk about the charisma, the announcement, because the tool, when you speak about a tool, you're talking about production, about making something. It also talks about specialists, people who know how to do something, and also moments. I now that it devote to YouTube, the radio program. So I'm talking about production specialists and moments. If I'm talking about charisma, on the other hand, I'm talking about this announcement, and the announcement does not have a production specialist in a moment. It takes over everything. It calls upon all of us, and it does it always. Production specialists moment. Everything, all, and always. It is essentially different. Communications. It is a lot more than production. It is a lot more than media. It is a lot more than technology and technique. Communications speaks of our preaching, our confession, about catechesis, about pastoral encounter with every person at all times, for all the ages and for all the places. That is why I would talk about entering fully into the understanding of our culture so as to understand its language, so as to understand its signs, so as to understand its times, its dynamics, its symbology. This is very important to fully enter our culture, to understand them and their dynamic, those who have to listen to us. Because if we have the most beautiful announcement that changes the essence and metaphysics of history, the others need to understand it. Because if not, it's as if we were not saying it. Culture, language, signs, at times, symbology. We have to show the beauty of the tenderness and God's mercy to today's humanity, to touch their minds and hearts, as Pope Benedict used to say, so they can understand the message, our message we receive with their own language, so that they find in our announcement the great and joyful announcement that changes the history of human existence, providing responses to the essential questions. Because life and death, the good and evil, where we come from, all those questions that make and change human existence, and that is responded in the heart. That is why it is so important to consider the concept of culture. And I want to share this reflection that digital reality, the one that we have to experience, is a culture. It is not an instrument. As if Pope Francis were here, he would say, let us repeat together digital reality is a culture, not a tool. But let us repeat it in our hearts. It's a culture, it's not a tool. I truly think that this is at the basis of the process of evangelization in the entire world. The church, in different ways, at different times, with so many vocations and charisms, is seeking to comply with the dynamic of incarnation, to comply with that great mandate: go to the ends of the world. Go and carry the joyful message of God. While in the church, this is important. While in the church, unless we make this switch in the church with this passage from tool to culture, we will not be able to do a true pastoral of communication. You know why? Because it will always be limited to a pastoral that uses the tool instead of thinking in cultural terms. And we're going to use it to achieve the things that communication understands without relying on the communications culture. So it's a parallel path. We have to take a step of intelligence and heart in order to understand that there's a cultural change, and this is what we are experiencing. We certainly have to look at the positive aspects and the not positive ones. But what is not taken up is not redeemed, as always, in every culture and every time. That is why let us recall digital reality is a culture. And then you look at Pope Francis's quote. It's great because he changes everything. He impregnates everything. He has a new dynamic. You know why? Because the tool is used and the culture is inhabited. The tools are used for ourselves, like the screwdriver. The culture is shared with all the others. The tool is used and the culture is evangelized and missioned, and the church with no culture, and the person finds the him or herself. What an important change we are called to by this change of paradigm and culture. So we have to think about going from technology to charisma because technology is for a few. Few use it, only those who know it. Charisma involves us all, from the youngest one to our grandmother that perhaps knows little about technology, but a lot about love. Technology looks at the production. Charisma involves everything because charisma does not imply the knowledge of how it's done. It involves the testimony of life. That is what makes the message credible to the recipient. This, if we speak about technology, we go from technology to charisma. This calls us to go from instrument, from tool to culture. The tool looks at the object, the culture understands time and space. It's everywhere. So the enculturation processes are necessary to establish an effective dialogue with every culture. When we wonder why young people don't come to mass, why they're not interested, let us not ask ourselves why. Let's not um, ask them why they don't come. Let us ask why don't we go? If they don't come, it's because they don't understand. It doesn't touch us the heart and mind in order to raise a question, an effective dialogue with every culture in order to identify the needs, the pains, the sadness, and that's what becomes announcement, evangelization, pastoral everywhere, because there's not one rule that applies to all. This also has some practical and concrete implications. We are here in an environment of consecrated people. I would say there are some practical and concrete perspectives. For instance, how should we understand our own charisms and vocations in light of the digital reality? How can we manage the times and spaces in consecrated life in the digital era? How should we understand the personal discipline, personal and community with the times, with the digital dynamics? I think that all of you, as communities, and if there are some superiors, when you come across the new sister who comes with the cell phone in her hand and she says, no, I'm evangelizing, posting a YouTube. Well, stop and take care of our thing. Some things that we did not know were introduced. We didn't know how to manage them. There's been a change in the horizon. I raised these three questions, and I suppose you have 50,000 more. I would try to cover them all in order to approach the answer into two principles. The first one, suggested by the synod, the process of spiritual dialogue and discernment. We cannot start from what we know and apply it to the new reality. We need discernment and a spiritual dialogue for a new creation because we have to be creative in problem solving. We cannot start on based on what we know and apply it because God has given us through Pope Francis something new. So you need to create something new, and this is done through discernment and spiritual dialogue, which requires time, efforts, and creativity. The second principle is the perspective of evangelization, not production. That is situating ourselves. I mean, these sisters are not doing things to put them on the internet. They're not answering messages. They are performing their mission in the digital continent, in that world of people who are searching, who are needy, who suffer, who are far. They are evangelizing. So this perspective changes the answer because it is not the sister who is preparing a video to be posted. She's inhabiting a space to encounter others who are there, and she is trying to send a message by articulating it in the dynamic time and of the other. I will read a bit of our document that I appreciate very much. It says, in any case, our culture is now a digital culture. In order to overcome the old dichotomy between digital and face to face, some people don't speak about online and offline. They just speak of on life, uniting human and social life in its different expressions, be that in digital or physical space. We all have our cell phone, and with our cell phone, we have our agenda, we have the messages, we share feelings, we ask for help, we are organized, we have our documents, our prayers, we exchange problems. It is a world that between the digital and the world, the physical world, there's no difference because the tools have mimicked reality and they help us live. It is no longer legitimate to make these divisions. Beforehand, there was a time and a space for a specific service. If you wanted to send an email, you went to the little room where the computer was, or you turned off the computer. And during that time, you were performing a service with a device. If you wanted to watch TV, you would go to the TV room, to the armchair, and at such and such time, you turned on the TV device service and watched TV. Now everything is here. Whatever we want to do is in one device, and it's done when I say so. So let us not fall in this cultural reductionism as as their real reality and digital reality. We understand that our reality is mixed. This is our culture. And this is where we must live and achieve and announce the Lord. At the beginning of the technological area, the view of the church on the use of these means was radically instrumental. The first documents of the church, let us think about those. It was about using the media. As of Benedict XVI, well, it started very strongly with John Paul II, but Benedict, in his very rich theology, said that the church referred to the internet as a place that is not only used, but also somehow inhabited, converting us into witnesses of what makes sense in the existence. That's why, in our case, I like to once again repeat we have to consider that the digital and communications reality is not just a tool, it is a culture and it is our culture because the tools are used, but the culture is evangelized, it is missioned. The church is in culture, then the person is found. It's like a refrain. The evangelizing challenge does not consist in learning to use new technologies. How is that? What's the best? What's the best technique? It is not about using technological means. It is inhabiting the new existential context of the human being. So it is about how we need to humanize the digital reality by filling it with the presence of Jesus. John Paul II in Redentoris Missio and has a sentence that is beautiful. He says it is not enough to use the media to circulate the Christian message. How much we see in our networks a copy of the teaching in order to spread the message. We have to integrate the message into this stage, this new culture created by modern communication, integrating the message, not just repeating it, but integrating it into the culture, this culture that we have to experience, because integrating also means doing culture. This is important. You know why? Because we are not only children of a culture, we are also parents of this culture because we too generate culture. One part of the culture that we experience and deliver goes through our hands, mouths, intelligence, and leaves our genetics. One piece of the culture that we deliver is made by us. That is why we are in a new situation. As Pope Benedict said, we are at the beginning of a new history, a new story. There are two speeches that I like very much by Pope Benedict about social communication when he talks to the priests and the young. Read it, it's beautiful. He says we are at the beginning of this era, and he says, just as the apostles at the beginning got into this culture, we he compares our time to the apostolic era. It's very strong, and he places us in a situation of mission. We're all missionaries, like the disciples, missionaries of history, as the church has always done with the missionaries who went to the new lands to announce Jesus. We too, but we're going to a new continent, a digital continent, where we are all part of learning that culture of those inhabitants to bring the message of life. I would very quickly look at how we can understand our mission as consecrated people in this new culture. I would say it on two tracks. The first one, to be and to feel missionaries. The second one, to be in love and to live as people in love. The first one, being missionaries, because it's the essence of the gospel for all. The gospel is full not only of the mandate, but the modality, foundation, the missionary dynamic. And we could recall this in two quotes. The first one is fantastic. It says, as the Father sent me, I too send you. think about what an intrinsic depth in our life, because we are in the Trinitary flow as the Father, me, the same who says, my Father and your Father. We are placed in the missionary flow as the Father sent me, I'm sending you. And we receive that new mission. That is why the quote says it, go throughout the world, preach, baptize, forgive, go. The second aspect is that is why being a missionary in this digital culture and, and places us within the great missionary flow of the entire church. We are continuators of a mission that the church has always achieved. We are in the flow of Saint Teresa, of Saint Francis Xavier, of the great missionaries who have discovered, who've fallen sick because they've tried to convey God's tenderness. And the third aspect that I love is that the origin of the missionary dynamic of every Christian, and especially the consecrated ones, because we live of that mandate, is in the Pentecost. Beautiful. It says they were locked up. They were not locked up with the letters. They were praying, united together with Mary, but they were afraid and they were locked up. The Spirit comes and opens everything, windows and doors, and they go out and they speak about the resurrected one with no fear. They open, they speak with no fear. And the particularity is that the others understand them in their own languages and cultures, in their languages and their cultures. That is the message of getting understood by them. They understood the apostles who knew nothing, but they announced with love and with a spirit. That is why the second point here is to be and live as a people in love. Because if the origin is in the mandate and the spirit, the achievement happens in the personal act that comes from the encounter. We understand that from the apostles. What do the apostles say? We cannot stay silent based on what we've seen. That's the origin of our personal missionary action, to have heard. The mission comes from the being and living as people in love. Unfortunately, the contrary also applies. If our heart does not burn to announce the Lord and so that the others understand us in their languages, it is because we're not in love, is because we have forgotten. And that is why our heart is not burning. Our heart has to burn when someone doesn't understand, doesn't feel the tenderness of Jesus, when someone cannot experience the great message, but also the message of each one of you, your congregation, when there's someone who has a vocation and you do not manage to transfer this flow, it has to burn you. You should not withstand for others to learn from the language of others. The third aspect is the mission. Every mission, from the biggest one to the smallest one, is not defined by the church, rather by Christ. It is defined during the Pentecost, so the doors open. And how do they follow the mission? Read the gospel, read the Acts of the Apostles. We cannot stay locked up in the sacristies, not even in the virtual ones that could be the new version in the networks, to be there like putting a like, but opening up to the one who continues searching for an answer. That is why our identity is to be missionaries. And we have to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be sent to the ends of the world? Let us not make virtual Christians. The sacristy is just to put the chalice down between one celebration and the other. Then after that, we have to be outside. Let us go out. Let us be a church that goes forth, searching for those who are far, those who suffer, those who are alone, who don't know, who need the church that goes forth go into the peripheries of the human being, and that person can be the last sister who joined, as well as the one you don't know how to deal with. Fall in love and learn their language. The origin of the dynamic goes back to the Pentecost. They were locked up in their home. They were afraid. The Spirit opens the windows. They all go out and they all listen and understand in their own languages. Let us have the courage to be touched by the culture. That is the center of our message, to understand the culture in order to understand it and to have the love to carry this message. Let's have the courage to listen, to see the man and the woman of today, to discover it, to know their sufferings and griefs, to learn about their searches and doubts, to be able to announce through their images, languages, and treasures our treasure, our joy, that is the Lord. And I conclude with the words by Pope Francis that really touch my heart in Christus Vivit. Francis says, it is no longer about using the communications tool. It's about living in a culture that is broadly digitalized, that very deeply affects the notion of time and space, the perception of oneself, of the others, and the world, our way of communicating, of learning, and informing ourselves and getting into a relation with the others. Thank you. Thank you so much, Father Lucio, for sharing these points that truly encourage us to realize that we have to be within this time. I'd like to resonate with a few things. Each one will then resonate with others. The fact about communicating the style of Jesus, there's a very good balance between the word and silence. This is an invitation from this document to guide the attention. The fact that communications is not just a technical fact, it's about inhabiting a different space and culture. And for this, we need to be formed and prepared at whatever age. And I also very much appreciated the topic of integration. At my age, at the age of some sisters who are here, who are not very young, we need an extra effort to integrate what we lived and what we grew up with. I think this is a challenge. I suggest that we're going to work like in the following manner. I will give you a minute so that our interpreters can also breathe and have a drink of water. I give you a minute so that we can each listen to what struck me the most. After this, we will have a very short moment simply for clarifications, questions only to clarify something. Then I would like us to have a moment of group work. It is not to produce something, just to have the possibility of getting to know each other, because the mission of communications is not something that we carry personally. and perhaps you can meet and get to know yourselves to create and produce projects in common. So we're now going to just take a minute so that our interpreters can rest, and then we're going to listen to what resonated with us. I repeat, these are questions for clarification. We're not going to have a dialogue now. We'll have that after the group. So we give the floor to Rosalia. Rosalia, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Father. Yeah, I'm really touched by your words that the digital is no longer as tools, but is a culture. And we know when we enter into these new cultures, there are something that we call it culture shock. Would you mind to give us some signs there is a part of the culture shock that we experience as we enter into this new culture? Thank you.
I would very briefly mention, and then if you like, we can organize something or give you some material from the digital synod. When Pope Francis uh, called for the synod, a lot of young people uh, contacted me to say how. I mean, the church who wants to listen to all will do nothing in the networks. How many people are there in the networks who do not go to church? If we want to listen to all, we have to go to the crossroads. And we began in March of last year exactly the same process as the synod, but in the networks, destined to all those who are not in the church, who are not in the institutions. So this gave us the possibility to find many people who needed, who had needs, who were afraid, who were ashamed. We even had baptisms because there were people who were distanced. They felt touched by this capability to listen of the Catholic influencers. We began with 3 influencers. Now there's 2,000 from the Philippines to America doing this, the same thing that the church does everywhere, but we do it in the networks, dedicating time with languages, times, the ways, but in the networks. And this is one example that gave us much depth. Another important thing, the ages went from 18 to 40, ages that we do not see often in the church. And 30% of those who participated to the first stage, we gathered 180,000 questionnaires. 30% were non-believers or distant from the church. The missionarity that allows us to have the courage to step outside with new times and new languages. Some things were well done, others were ugly, but there was the courage to try to have a dialogue with culture. That is why I was saying something that is very interesting when it comes to vocations. Our seminaries, our vocation houses, we all have vocation crisis, we have to see how we can speak and present the beauty of vocation in the language, in the ways, and the times of the digital culture. How can this be done? You have to discern, study, think, but we can no longer postpone it. We cannot step away from a culture that is the culture. This is not a YouTube production. It's not about creating a YouTube or Twitter. It's about thinking about a continent, a reality. That's what I would say. Thank you, Father. But thank you, Rosalia, because this topic of cultural shock is very interesting. We experience it and we have to manage it, integrate it, and I think it's very interesting. So let us now go work in our groups. Gianluca is going to help us send us to the groups. The ones who have not indicated a language will stay in this room and slowly we will send them to their groups. What are we going to do in the groups? We've prepared 2 questions. Before going to our groups, we'll give you a few minutes for personal reflection. So you can reflect on these 2 questions I will now show you. After these 3 or 4 minutes, we will play some music to facilitate personal reflection. Gianluca is going to place us into our language groups. You will have more or less 20 minutes. The groups are small. The suggestion is that during a first round, you're going to share the answers to the 2 questions we're giving you. It is important to not worry about who has to keep a report. No, it's not necessary. The group is for you. Then when you return, we can have some questions or comments, personal or from the groups, so that Father Lucio can give us some extra hints and orientations. But the group makes sense in itself because you can listen to others and learn from others. So I will now share the questions. I will leave them on the screen. There are 2 questions. We're going to take a few minutes of personal time. And after these minutes, Gianluca is going to send us to the groups. First round, we listen to the answers to the questions from each other, and then we can resonate with what we learned from the others. And if you want to bring something to the plenary, great. Otherwise, we're going to just gather some intuitions and comments.
I would like to ask Gianluca to send the people in the language groups. We will have 20 minutes for our groups. I would like to invite you to take advantage of this opportunity to get to know one another, to learn from the best practices of your sisters. And I will also send you again the questions in the chat so that you may have them at your disposal. Gianluca, are there any problem with the groups? Okay, so let's go.
Hello, this is Josephine. I'm in English group. My network has been disturbing. May you connect me to the room? I've been off. I've been off. I don't know what has been going on. The network had dropped me out. Mm. Thank you.
It looks like I'm the only one. At some point, I thought that I was wrong, that this was only for women. No, our webinars are open to everyone, also lay people who work with religious life. We are very welcoming women. I work for a feminine congregation. Oh, great. So you're not a father? No, I'm a lay person. Okay, great. I think we are more or less all back. I hope you had a great experience sharing with everybody, because we can learn and we can copy other congregations too. We now have some time to take advantage of our Father Lucio, not just for his wisdom, but also enthusiasm that we then can share with our superiors, so that they are encouraged to recognize communications as a mission. So if you like to comment something, ask something, or simply express a challenge that you experience in the congregation or something that emerged in the group, we're going to gather a few elements and then we'll give Father Julio's, will share some reflections, a space to resonate with these suggestions. Whomever wishes to speak can use the icon of the electronic hand or write in the chat box. Good morning or good afternoon. Well, to me, it's day, it's not afternoon. So thank you, Patricia. I was sharing with Maria and Conchita that as we feel close in social networks and what we expect. I'm a Cambodian missionary, and I feel that becoming close in social networks is, to me, is an inheritance because our founder, there was nothing that he did not communicate. He started a newsletter called the Annals of the Good Shepherd to be sent to all the friends and all the societies in Italy and France, so they might be aware of the situation of the mission and so they might become involved. I feel even Jesus, I mean, communications is an inheritance, perhaps. I let it sleep or I don't update it, but it's something that exists since the gospel. And all of our founders had that desire to communicate so that to make known what they had seen, experienced, and the needs of the world. And they very much loved the realities they experienced. And I feel that we have to recover the inheritance that they left us with regard to communicating what we are and do. Thank you, Maria Delia. Now, Isabel. Good morning. To me, it is morning. We discussed it was a rich sharing in groups as we also listening to others also enriches us. And I think that the pandemic marked a before and after, and it made like a point of encounter after the pandemic. This was strengthened, or the pandemic helped us strengthen the communications in this digital world. But I have 2 points that concern me. One, I'm a Carmelite of Vedruna. We've been on a long journey already, but there are always like two areas: communications adintra and to and outwardly. We to the to the exterior, we get more in contact with people and young people, but inwardly we often experience it as learning techniques and tools, and we miss this digital culture. We do not get into that feeling, although there are means, but we don't go deeper. So I wanted to ask Lucio, how could he help us to all get involved, not just toward the outside and the mission that we carry out? And then it's about creating community in social networks. I think that it is key to maintain interaction and also visualizing through Zoom cameras or different elements, because seeing the faces helps us and it strengthens that communication and that entry into that culture. Thank you, Lorena. And then Susana Bani can get ready afterwards. Lorena? Yes, good morning. My question, well, based on what we shared on the group, is how can we help raise awareness of the fact that this digital reality is a culture, it is a mission, but not just for the provincial communications team. How can we help the remainder, the rest of the sisters, to get into this digital culture and inhabit it, and the culture of encounter, getting in? How can we become aware of the fact that it's not a waste of time? It is clear that it's a reality that already exists, but how can we raise awareness so that we can inhabit this virtual reality? Thank you, Lorena. I don't know whether Sister Susana Bani, welcome. Well, the sharing was very rich. Personally, I wanted to share because these three questions that we saw were questions, I mean, important points resonated very much when I read Fully Present. So I was wondering, how can I grow closer to the people? And the document is, what resonates with me is the fact of listening. And in this listening, there's my brother and my sister, and it asks something of me. But how can we learn to listen in social networks? And the reality of the other touches me. I have to feel touched, and the story of the other should challenge me. And also in listening to the other, how the other one challenges me, and the story of the other, this also requires an interaction. I think Isabel was saying that this should invite me to establish a community. So the website of the Dicastery for Communication seemed excellent, especially the Fully Present one, because it's very interactive. It makes it possible for all to participate, but especially this introduction to say how I am being challenged. How can we do this with our brothers and sisters who are on at the edge of the road? How can we establish a community, because they need to be heard? How I love this expression by Lucio, that I'm going to fall in love, and as I fall in love, I understand the language. So how can I fall in love with my brothers and sisters who are at the edge of the road, in order to understand their language and reach them? That is my concern. Thank you. There was another sister, but she has disappeared. I'd like to add a question for Lucio. I invite all the brothers and sisters to read the summary document of the Digital Synod, because it talks a lot about what is expected and what is wanted by young people. I will publish this webpage again in the chat box so you can have this handy. Can you tell us a bit more about the role of the influencers? The church is investing a lot on this. They've had a meeting of Catholic influencers in Lisbon, also in Rome for the synod. What is the role of the influencers, that can be brothers, religious, or laity, to be incarnated in this context? We leave you the floor so you may give us a few more um, guidelines. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I made a note of some questions. I don't know whether I wrote them all down, but it's about summarizing several of these questions. They are very powerful and they come from hearts that are in love and convinced. And this is beautiful. And it's about how to fall in love, how to establish a community with those who suffer. How can we discover the other? I think there's something which is what I promoted with the young influencers. It's about having time. That is making room in empty spaces. Remember the thing about the ancient Greeks that silence and laziness are the basis of intellectual life. The Greek, in order to be philosophers, placed themselves in a position of boredom, not doing anything as a method, because that doing nothing and having their mind bored encouraged them to start doing philosophy. So I told the young people, get bored, do nothing, be bored with the objective of being available for the other. If there is an important key in these modern times, is that no one has time for anything, not couples, not parents with their children, friends. No one has time. And look who's talking. No one has time. So, in our hyperactivity and our concern, also by virtue of our service, of course, but the lack of time prevents us from realizing what is happening before our eyes. And I'm going to share a very intimate personal experience. I was very struck when Pope Francis started his papacy. He started talking about the poor and making alms as he looked into their eyes. It seems like something silly, but that totally changed my life, to walk by and give that coin, and looking in their eyes, I've discovered eyes, smiles, words, a thank you that comes from the heart, or have a good day. I found people in 3 seconds. It's not, I did not devote it for hours, but sometimes having that little amount, that little time made me discover the person. So as you discover the person, you discover suffering, pain, and the need. And that is where we can announce, that is where the community begins, the encounter, everything. How to do this? Dedicate some time to listening, not even for production. It is not about making productions. We need to be the ear and the heart that listens to the brother in order to help. When you do a production, you'll see this with vocations. If you start listening to young people, if you give them time, you will begin to sense an approach, because young people have no one that listens to them. And the theme of the digital synod is about listening. You have to go to all of them. I mean, produce contents, but the contents must be provoking, provoke someone to say, hey, can you give me my nickname so you can contact me? That's why I said that we even had baptisms, when people started realizing that there were these young people who felt like listening, like helping. And I said that never try to solve problems. There are problems that cannot be solved, but they can be accompanied. You can be by their side. This Syrian did not resolve the problem of the cross, but he helped them carry it. So, how can we discover the other? By opening up a little piece of our heart. There's no other recipe, because how can you fall in love? By discovering it. When you have some time, you open up your eyes and ears and you realize that the other is there, and you discover the entire world. I love this part about looking at the other. Every time I have a very tough and important meeting, I like to go to be blessed by a poor. I approach him and I ask him to please bless me, because you have to discover Jesus. So, how can we discover the other? By giving him time and knowing that that person is my Jesus at the time, and that that smile is going to brighten me with God's smile and tenderness. It may be a poor and hungry, but also the poor who's in the network, desperate because no one gives him time, because he's angry at life. And we don't know why, perhaps angry at the church, and we do know why. Time, it's about time. To me, this is a secret. Open up some spaces and in time. That's why I was telling the superiors who see these little sisters, do not tell them, no, don't do it. Just tell them, don't do so much production and devote more time to silence, to listening, to search for the one who's alone, sad, and desperate. In this answer, I would respond to the question about what's the role of the influencers. I invited them all to follow the flow of the synod, to listen, to accompany, to feel, to ask for forgiveness. I have the case of an influencer. She's, if you see her networks, they all look like nonsense because she gets stressed, she puts makeup, etc. But she's someone who always speaks with tenderness and gives a message of Jesus with much tenderness. She has approached prostitutes, people on the street, and this touched me, because if you look at the posts, they're like, whoa. But last year, at the end of the year, from these simple posts, but in the language of others, and those times she did a campaign to take some food and Christmas gifts to the children with prostitutes. They made a little train and they made it up. That's why I'm saying that the real and virtual reality come together when there's love, but there's a love that is given. There's a love that is given. Let me read the questions, listening as a starting point. How to raise awareness to avoid that, like this. When you say, look, there's someone who needs you, your time, your words. I tell the influencers, look, I see in you the representation of the image of the good shepherd who speaks to the sheep, and you have 10, 100, 1,000, a million followers. What I do know is that those people who follow you, it is because in your voice they hear the good shepherd. So speak to them, because in you they hear the good shepherd. You are the good shepherd, guiding these sheep with the voice they recognize. So that's where tenderness steps in. That's what we need to teach in through our attitude in the networks. It says to shepherd the people of God who's searching, and then those we see doing it, let's accompany them, let's teach them. When After the first stage of the synod, I ended up having 254 influencers. I had a synod with them, and I said, "Okay, now you're done listening to your followers, and now I'm going to sit down with you." The most tremendous thing that touched my heart, that was really powerful, was the fact that nobody listens to them, not the bishops, not the priests, nobody. Nobody appreciates them. Nobody acknowledges them as missionaries. Nobody considers them. Many people think that they are a parallel doctrine, people who are wasting time or who are just idolizing. It's very common because since they are in front of the camera, they think they're egotistical, egocentric, and self promoting. I asked an influencer with 1 million followers who comments the word of God every day. I'd like to see a priest doing that anyhow. And I told him, why do you always look at the video? Don't you think it's a little self centered? And he looked at me as if to say, what are you talking about? And he said, I'm not looking at the camera. I am looking at the device that allows me to look at the others in their eyes. Right now, I'm looking at the camera, the objective, and you at this time are seeing me as if I were looking at into your eyes. So if I know how to use this device so well, but not to present myself, rather to meet eye to eye with you, I'm establishing a connection heart to heart. Those are the points of technology and technique. These are two different things. There's a message here. Is there a problem? No, no, we'll fix it. Thank you. So I was saying, and this influencer was saying, I'm not presenting myself. If I want to meet the other, I have to look into his eyes, and the other one has to see a face with which he is talking. And if the person thinks that I'm self centered, he's forgetting that in a personal encounter, there's a person and a pair of eyes looking. And he just killed me. He killed me because that just goes to say that we're talking completely different languages based on a culture that doesn't know the means, and we just think that this person is self-centered, but the other one is using the culture of this time, and he found a way to encounter this person. The other question that I had to answer is, how can we ensure that they serve the same communities? I think that in this dynamic, when you start understanding the cultural richness, you also begin having initiatives and ideas about how to share. For example, a community may have much richness in singing, in theology, or spirituality, and they may share it with another community that doesn't have the same. If you start seeing that these are not tools, rather spaces that allow us to inhabit and share, the richness from one community can be shared. And it's not just about sharing economy or problems, but also the richness that God has given to us. When one starts realizing that it is a space to inhabit, or perhaps there's a religious sister who's alone, who's bedridden or at the hospital. If anybody can devote her some time, I'll tell you a secret. When we established the Instagram with Pope Francis on March 19th that year, every time I go to hospitals, I like to bring images of Pope Francis caressing the sick, etc. When you go visit them and you bring a picture of Pope Francis, the first thing they do is to put it on their heart, believers or non-believers, because at the hospital, when you're sick, everything is love. So they would place it there. And I told the Pope, why don't we do something on the internet so that people with their phone can feel you on their hearts? So we started this process to do that. We called Kevin Sissa, the founder of Instagram, and in 3 weeks we had this project done. What we wanted was that tenderness could reach beyond the limits of like a nice photograph of a hug, a blessing, a presence that caresses your heart. So how can we ensure that it can serve communities to see the needs, who needs what, and who can offer something to cover that need, to respond to that need? It could be great, it could be small. The sister who's lying in bed, Sister Juana, let's pray the rosary together. Perhaps Sister Juana is on the other side of the world, bedridden without being able to do anything. Perhaps one of you is on the other side of the world and is about to pray the rosary, and you can pray the rosary with Sister Juana. When you're in love, you're creative. That's the point. When you're in love, you're always creative. There are two more questions, and then we conclude. I don't know whether I answered all the questions. I did not take notes, so I trust you. Well, if there's a question pending, just repeat it in the chat. One question raised by Sophia. She says, for us, it is a challenge to carry our charism, which is listening to social networks. How can we form this culture of listening for networks in our congregations? I think that this is a question that covers the challenge for all communicators who don't know how to communicate sometimes with general teams or provincial teams. They don't know how to communicate what it means to work in communications. Another thing that, as Sister said before, or there's another question. How can consecrated people manage the issues with dependency, pornography, and the incorrect use of social networks? And the last one was more like a statement, and it's in Italian.
It is important to have this digital communication, but it's quite hard for us in Africa. Congregations are not deeply involved, and the problem of connection makes it even harder.
I'll leave you the floor for a few closing words in 2 minutes, and then we're going to conclude. Very quickly, the issue about pornography. I'll begin with Africa and then go on to the last idea. That is the one that covers all the rest. The issue of pornography, it's a reality, but I mean, it is not very new. It is strengthened and facilitated, but it's not new. That's why I always love to speak about education for freedom. If you have a value and a love, you have to learn how to manage it. Otherwise, you're going to lose it. Pornography and violence are a click away, and every day in our spam, we have everything we might wish for. That's what we need to teach the young people, not put like great filters or firewalls, just to tell them it's your problem, it's your life, it's your love, it's what you want. Just choose what you want, but do not live two lives. Do not be fake with yourself. You either want to be a gift or not, but you manage it. And that path is accompanied through the pitfalls, and it's everybody's life, but especially in educating for freedom, because pornography, violence was present, is present, and will be present. But freedom, education, and accompaniment are the most important things. That is why it is important to teach the use of time, that the person should also be capable of managing like everything else. Because I like to say always that this is not a problem with the digital world, it's a problem in the heart of man. Now it is strengthened and simplified, but the problem is in here, it's not what goes into man, it's what comes out of him. It's the same thing. Education for freedom, to manage time, to manage the gazes, the feelings, especially love. That's the first question. Africa. I work a lot. We have about 150 African influencers, but they recreated the concept of the influencer. The African influencer is not like the European or American. They don't have all the networks we have, but what did they do? Let us be a network among the influencers. And the influence of God's tenderness is made in presence because their group doesn't have any internet. So, yes, we do have communities to help and guide, so we'll just establish a network amongst us to help each other. And we do that in present. We don't have to look through the window to what the others do. You have to look at the reality of what you have and can do. That is in the key of love, because if you look at what the others have and what you're missing, you'll do nothing. And it's not okay, because the reality and the grace is given by God for the here and now, or not the hypotheticals. The third point, how can we learn to communicate? How can we live in communities? Missionaries, or the mission in the church, was always the same. We have to learn the technique, the technology. The missionaries who came to Latin America or Africa, they learned about medicine, music, agronomy. They learned all sorts of things because you had to go to a territory where everything had to be done. But everything led to this objective. We don't have to learn medicine, agronomy. We have to learn technology, the communication. Let us be capable, because I was saying that the kerygma is not set on production. I love to tell the bishops when they come to the Ad Limina visits, communication is kerygma. It's not a YouTube production, because if we understand that it's kerygma, the homily, although it is not on YouTube or Instagram, must also speak that language. It is what Pope Francis says, and a homily of a maximum of 10 minutes. Nobody can listen beyond, in short sentences. The narrative, the gospel. How do we know God the Father, mercy, and the sins? Everything through parables. We are not reinventing the wheel, the narrative, the story of Jesus. It was the images, the words. At some point in the church, we became quite difficult and dark, but Jesus was like that. The image of Jesus, let's think about the lost drachma, the good shepherd. All those parables are very clear, and that is how we came to know the dogmatic of God and his intimacy. Then we became extensive and difficult. The current time calls us to be more like Jesus in the gospel. Short, simple, but the great saints always had this imagination to pass through the language of the listener. So, how can we do it? By learning the tools, but especially learning the other. because the old sister, the old priest who cannot learn must also speak as if they were teaching short and involving sentences that touch the intelligence within the heart. It's a problem for everyone. It's not just a production of a parable. This is what is important. So, for those who are capable, they should also learn to use a device and the sound and graphic software, but we should all learn the culture so that that old nun may tell the new nun something beautiful about her life with an image, with tenderness, so that that may turn on and light up the heart of the other so that she can transmit it. Thank you, Father Lucio. I saw there are other questions and elements that we will save. We're not going to lose anything. We're going to save all of this. And perhaps tomorrow we'll continue reflecting on this with Sister Rose Paca. As this sister from the Daughters of St. Paul will continue reflecting. So, Father Lucio, thank you so much for your effort after having traveled, I don't know how many hours, get off the airplane, run home and connect. This was a great gift of incredible generosity. And it was great for us to listen to you directly instead of through your video, isn't it, Paola?
Yes, thank you so much, even on behalf of the president of USMI, Sister Michaela Monetti. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy to have shared with you. And let's go and just go forward, always forward.
Thank you, Father Lucio, not only for your words, but even for enthusiasm, which is necessary for us communicators to congregations. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you to our interpreters. Thank you to all the people behind the scene working for this event, particularly Gianluca, Therese, Miriam, Alice, and so on. They helped us so much to make this event possible. I would like to remind you very shortly about the international meeting. We will start the inscriptions shortly. This is a week of events from November 27th to December the 4th. As I was telling you, we will have workshops for formation, some meetings for communicators, men and women, and some roundtables open to the general public. On this occasion, we will also present a research that UISG carried out with the congregations, with many congregations, on how they communicate, with which tools, with which strategies. This research has been really interesting, and it also provided us with very interesting results. So tomorrow we will continue our reflection with this document. Thank you to Sister Rose. We will see tomorrow at 2 p.m. I have Sister Alice with me here. She carried out the whole interview and the questionnaire. So thank you very much and have a nice day. See you tomorrow. You can open your microphones. So thank you, Maurizio. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Grazie mille.
Thank you so much.
Muchas
Thank you very
gracias. Merci
much.
beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
Share.
much.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Andiamo.
Thank you. Thank
Arrivederci
you.
See you
domani.
tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye. Hasta la vista.
Thank you.
Buonanotte.
Chifundo, how are you? Sister.